I'm Greg Tepper. That's Greg Powers, and this is This Week
in Cruton.
Greg Powers is here. The
What's
other
up?
Greg 2.
We're just Powers and Tepper, I think.
Greg 2.0. Yeah. Does anybody? Let me ask you, as a Greg, how many people call you Greg?
None.
Almost nobody. Yeah, because almost nobody calls me. Like my wife calls me Greg, but that's because she's also Tepper. Anyway, Greg Powers from Next Level Athlete is here. Follow him on Twitter at gpower79, and follow Next Level Athlete on Twitter at nextlevelD1. Powers, let's get into This Week in Cruton, and let's start with our. What was the first one we did?
Prospect
on the
Rise.
Prospect on the Rise. You mix it up here, but I appreciate that because you always kind of put the headline first. And the Prospect on the Rise here is we're going down to the Houston area. It's to Stafford. Talk 2020. Defensive end Robert Wooten. And
Yep.
this kid is jumping onto people's radar in a hurry.
And deservedly so. What I really like about Robert Wooten, of course, we're going to watch some of his Next Level Athlete Showcase camp video here, watch him going through drills, but on tape he's a guy who is that hybrid 6'3", 225, 230 pound kid who I think a lot of schools probably thought, maybe he's an stand up, hand on the dirt hybrid type of guy. But I love what he does as a true defensive end, and I think that he will grow into a more true defensive end as he matures. Spends all of his time basically with his hand in the dirt on the high school tape. So he's a guy who I really think as defensive ends start to come out of the woodwork, that's one of those positions that, defensive end, defensive tackle, offensive lineman, they start to pop up more throughout the spring evaluation period. I think Wooten's one of the best in the state, and his offer list is starting to reflect that. Texas Tech being a big Power 5 in-state offer stepping up this week.
Because here's a guy who played for a Stafford team that has had great years in the past, but last year was just getting underwhelming, 4-6. But this is a guy, and maybe another guy who got overshadowed by one of his teammates in Ken Savannah, the senior. But this is a guy who had 66 tackles, 15 tackles for loss, led the team in sacks with 8. And you see the frame. And it's not outside the realm of possibility to see him add more weight to that frame too. That's something that I know that you can't teach that, so to speak.
What I love to watch him too on this camp stuff is that he went up against the top guys. He's going up against Donovan Jackson and some of the most elite guys in the state, 2020, 2021 guys, and here he is matched up with Hayden Connor, who's going to be one of the best in the country, and had some really great battles with those guys. It was a lot of fun to watch, very competitive, but also is the total package off the field, well-spoken kid, decent grades, and I think that a lot of schools are going to be all over him. Of course, Tulsa overshadowed sometimes as an academic institution by some of the other schools, but it is a pretty good academic school, and they were his first offer.
That's so Robert Wooten out of Stafford down there in the Houston area, the 2020 defensive end, our prospect on the rise this week. Let's talk about our commit of the week. Keller Central, another program that has just kind of quietly, routinely put out really solid FBS kid. You remember Zach Sanchez a couple of years ago. They got another one, an athlete, Davon Graham. They call him DJ, though. He commits to Oklahoma. This is a guy who's a true athlete in that, we could really see him play either side of the ball, it seems like.
Right, and we'll talk about a couple of these guys actually in this as we go through it. But DJ's one of those guys who his upside may be best on the defensive side of the football because of his height and his speed. But, man, he is a ball of lightning with a football in his hands. He can really make people miss. And we'll watch through his highlights here, and you'll see him playing offense, defense, special teams, and that's kind of what he brings to the table. And it wasn't really a huge surprise that he made his commitment to Oklahoma over offers from schools like, Georgia, LSU, Ohio State offered him as well, because he told me in my first interview with him about 2 years ago, believe it or not, that Oklahoma was the one. That was the one. He looked up to Zach Sanchez a little bit, and it all worked out for him that he's able to follow that same path now and play at OU. And if I'm a college, as a college football fan, I look at that OU defensive backfield and my eyes light up, if I'm a guy like DJ Graham. But maybe he likes having the football in his hands. I think that's TBD.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because the thing is he's got the skills to play on either side of the ball. And by the way, don't look now, but Oklahoma cleaning up in the class of 2020 so far.
No big surprise.
Yeah. Jace McClellan, of course, the longtime Oklahoma commit, the Alito running back. Drew Sanders, the athlete out of Denton Ryan, who's a guy who I know. If he was a secret before this past year, he is no longer a secret. And now joining them is DJ Graham out of Keller Central, the Oklahoma's class coming together in class of 2020.
And OU was the number 1 rated school within our Texas high school football Hot 100. OU signed more prospects than any out-of-state program.
Impressive stuff. We're talking with Greg Powers of Next Level Athlete here on Texas Football Today. Get involved in the conversation, hashtag TF Today. Let's go down to our Underclassman of the week. Back down to the Houston area.
Yep.
2021 kid who coming off of his sophomore season, quarterback Jalen Milroe. Out of Katy Tompkins, one of the newest programs down there in Katy, got his first Power 5 offer. Comes from Nebraska. Yep. The Huskers looking at this 6'1", 185-pound quarterback.
And he's a true dual threat guy and really passes the eyeball test. I mean, this guy is really well put together. What I really love about his game, and now he's going to have to shore up his mechanics, and he's going to have to continue to make strides as a technician at the quarterback position, but he has an arm rocket. This dude can really fit the ball into tight windows, has the ability to dial it up 70 yards if he needs to. All gas, no brakes is how I would kind of explain him right now. But he's got a very high upside, and his offer list is coming together very quickly. He's a guy who can fit into that spread, zone read option scheme, and I think that you'll see a lot of colleges who run that come after him. Schools in Texas that I think should target him. I mean, he's already been on some good visits already, but I mean, he just seems or feels like a guy who would really excel in the Baylor offense. I don't know why I think that, but maybe it's the right call. Maybe
well,
not.
And you mentioned, I'm glad you brought up that he's not. I think he'd probably admit it. He's not a technician right now.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of times where you watch Jalen Milroe, and we saw him a number of times kind of throughout the year. And it's just it's a lot of backyard football. It's a lot of I'm a lot more concerned about getting the ball where it needs to go than it looking good. He's a kid who obviously has tons of talent, just needs a little bit of polish.
Could play any other position too.
Yes.
I mean, he's a freak.
Yes, he really is, and at 6'1", 185 pounds, that will play. And a guy who was impressive as a sophomore, helped guide Tompkins to a really breakout year in 2018.
Playoff run, right?
Yeah, playoff run, and is only getting better. As a sophomore, this is the kind of thing that if this tape were from a senior, you'd go like, ooh, I have some concerns about, arm slot. I have some concerns about some of the throws that he makes. But as a sophomore, you go, okay, this kid's got superstar potential. Let's just polish up. Let's shine off a couple of these rough edges, and he could be a real dynamo.
I dived into his tape a little bit further last night too. Of course, we had him at the Next Level Showcase as well, so we got a chance to eyeball him up in close and in person. But watching his tape, he makes pretty quick reads. He seems like a pretty cerebral kid. So I think Katy Tompkins is really liking their potential over the next couple of years with him leading their offense.
Absolutely. It's Jalen Milroe, our prospect on the rise, our underclassman of the week, rather. Katy Tompkins, quarterback. Jalen Milroe going to be just a junior coming up in 2019. And then finally, let's go to our recruiter of the week. Our recruiter of the week, going out east to the Tomato Bowl. 2020 athlete Chris Carpenter has committed. He is heading to North Texas.
Good start for North Texas, man, because Chris Carpenter, this dude can really play.
Yes, he can.
I really like him. I think the North Texas coaching staff is going to have a lot of fun arguing over whether he plays offense or defense, because he's a guy. We talked a little bit about DJ earlier being able to fit on both sides of the football. Carpenter is a guy who, because of his length, his agility, and his speed, could be making millions maybe in the NFL one day as a defensive back. There are a lot of receivers in the state of Texas. That list goes 100 deep every year of guys who could play at the next level. That list of defensive backs or cornerback recruits, not quite as deep.
No.
So we'll see what ends up being his true calling, but I know that North Texas is going to have to fight to keep him on that list. A lot of schools have already offered him and are going to continue to keep the heat up on him, especially when they see his versatility, what he could bring to either side of the football when they stop through during the evaluation period.
Well, and this is another guy that I think, because he played for a team that, quite frankly, wasn't all that good. They were 3-7 last year. It was a forgettable year for the Indians in 2018. But this is a guy that, as a junior, really popped off, and you saw what he was able to do. He hauled in 31 catches for 501 yards and 2 touchdowns. He ran for another 255 yards and 3 scores. He punts He returns kicks. He does a little bit of everything for the Indians, and a guy who I think that if he were on a better team and maybe made a deep playoff run would be the kind of guy that maybe is getting a little bit more attention. As a result, though, North Texas is able to swoop in and get what feels like a real steal from out east.
Right, and this is one of those guys who, we preach this all the time to kids who are making their highlight tape. This is one of those guys who you watch the first play and you go, okay, let's go after this guy.
Yeah.
So North Texas, to be able to get an early commitment from a guy like Chris Carpenter really says a lot. And you'll notice if you look around and research a lot of information on him right now, no one even has a photo of him. So
That's under the radar. That's under the radar. If you can't find a photo online, Chris Carpenter, or somebody get a photo of Chris Carpenter up there. Come on, because he's certainly worth it now that he's committed to North Texas. Chris Carpenter from Jacksonville commits to North Texas. A lot of good stuff at TexasFootball.com from our friend Greg Powers and Next Level Athlete. A lot of good stuff, and keep an eye on
2 segments.
Oh, we're going to keep you around, but keep an eye out on the site for more stuff, more exciting stuff from the recruiting side. We've got big time plans for Texas Texas football insiders coming up here. As Greg Powers of Next Level Athlete, he's going to stick around for the second segment too.
Let's do it.